Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to the Sweetwater Minute. We have a special guest with us here in the studio today. This is Sir Sly. We've got Hayden, Landon, and Jason. Appreciate you guys coming in.
Thanks for having us.
So what you up to here at Sweetwater today?
We played an acoustic performance with Alt 99.5, and we are now getting the tour of the building, eating food.
Heard there's a slide I'm going to try at some
There's a
point.
slide you got to try out.
Skate park that we're all super excited about.
All kinds of fun stuff going on.
Yeah.
Right. That's awesome. So you guys are out touring.
Yeah, we're on tour.
Where are you coming from? Where are you headed to?
We just did like Gov Ball, Bunbury weekend, and now we are headed for a day off in Michigan. And
Grand Rapids, and then Detroit, then Indianapolis, and then Bonnaroo next weekend. And then I think we're out here for another month or so.
Right.
Yeah.
And you got a little break, come back out in August and September and October. And you guys are busy through the year, aren't you?
yeah, we got a little bit of stuff all the way through the year at least.
Right.
A little bit here and there, and then hopefully another full-on tour in the fall.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. That's great. So tell us a little bit about the progression and the development of the band. You guys have done 2 albums and an EP. You've been touring. It's been about 6 years, is that right, since the band's kind of been together?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit where you started from and how you got to where you're at now.
The EP is kind of cheating. All those songs are also on the first album as well.
Well, we'll still count it.
Yeah. It's just a rebrand.
There you go.
Yeah, we've been a band for, 5 years
5.5
now?
years,
That's
yeah.
crazy. Time flies. Yeah, I mean, I think we just enjoy writing music together, and we found a way to enjoy touring as well, and to do it in a way that I think we're really proud of, and to put on shows that we really like. And recently, with the advent of some pretty serious radio support, those shows have been getting kicked up a little notch. We've been playing a lot of festivals, which is really fun. I think since the beginning of being a band, that's something we always wanted to do.
Right.
So we kind of just get to do everything we like to do for a living, and not have to work at coffee shops or as sports journalists anymore.
Right. Good for you.
Yeah. I mean, Lan and I, we've been friends for a while. We kind of grew up together, but meeting Jason, whenever it was 5-6 years ago, and him having his studio and being able to introduce us to different ways of writing and recording music. I mean, that's kind of become the core of this project, is working these things out at Jason's studio is kind of our headquarters, and we try different things, and then it's and then from there we tour and rinse repeat. But it's we love the studio. I think we're all a little bit of homebodies, but playing these songs live too has their own kind of amazing energy to it. But
Right. As I understand the story, the two of you were working on music together, playing together, and had gone to your house to record. Is that correct? Originally, so tell us about your home studio and how you got into to working in that world.
I mean, I've just been playing bands since high school, and just there weren't a lot of options for recording, or they were expensive. So me and my bandmates would just cobble together various gear that we could get our hands on and start recording our own bands, and then just kind of escalated from there. Just kept trying to get better and progress and get new gear, and then met these guys. I met these guys, recorded their record, and then we started writing our own music together.
Right.
And just always acquiring more gear for the studio. It's always I see pieces of gear as new inspiration. So if I can write a song from a new piece of gear, then it's worth it to have that, and then we can use it live or again, you know what I mean? So it's not I don't feel quite that frivolous spending money on this stuff, because it's an investment, I guess, to hopefully write new music, you know what I mean?
Right.
But
Right. Yeah.
Jason just remodeled the studio for us, so we have a little fresh space out for album 3.
Yeah.
Nice.
Keep it fresh.
Yeah.
Nice.
It is amazing.
Yeah.
It's what did you say?
Investment?
An investment. That's what I was looking for. Yeah, it's an investment in enjoyment. I think more than anything, really, for all of us, is to be able to enjoy ourselves making music. It's always nice to have fresh gear or a fresh perspective, and there's something that having new stuff in the studio. It's proven time and time again. Every time Jason gets a new keyboard or new guitar pedals or anything, it's always fresh and fun to be able to come into the studio.
He set it up so that everything is on, essentially. So there's an ISO drum room, there's a live drum room, all the synths, all the guitar. So it makes it really fun to work at, because it's flowing all the time. Anybody can be.
You don't have to wait for something to be plugged in and so if you're in the moment, like trying to write something, you don't have to wait 5 minutes to patch it in and then lose that kind of train of thought or whatever. Just keeps everything quick. I think we like to work quick too.
Right.
Yeah.
So obviously we're not talking about a corner in the living room or a corner of the bedroom studio.
No.
This is a little bit more of a...
It's a home studio, but there are 3 rooms. There's like a big, I actually just flipped it. We used to have a bigger live room and then like a smaller control room, so I kind of flipped that. So the control room is like it's like a 500 square foot room, and just like everyth's around, just like a little playground. You can play everything.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice, that's great.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I find interesting listening to your music is how you guys will blend a lot of synth and a lot of electronics, and you've got samples, but there's also acoustic guitars in there and obviously a lot of vocals as well. So it gives it an interesting blend of organic and electronic that you're bringing together. Tell us a little bit about that approach and how you achieve that.
I mean, just from a songwriting perspective, I grew up playing and writing on piano and acoustic guitar and playing in coffee shops and that kind of stuff. And all my favorite artists were people who worked heavily with piano and acoustic guitar. And then that was kind of what Hayden and I were doing a little bit more. And then we were listening to pop music and electronic music and hip hop. Like, I grew up listening to a lot of that kind of stuff. But the stuff that I saw myself in was all that, like, Ryan Adams, like that kind of singer-songwriter world. We met Jason, and he was like way heavier into electronic music. And then via that path, I think we all got really heavily influenced by electronics. And then like along the way, I think like in my late teenage years, like hearing bands like Radiohead and stuff who were working a lot with electronics and kind of the fusion between being that raw kind of like rock band and then a little bit of the singer-songwriter elements and then mixing that with like really heavy electronic stuff was kind of felt like the best blend of the 3 of us. In early interviews, we used to talk a lot about how the band was really like the coalescing of the 3 different personalities and what we bring to the table, and that's it's still very, very true. But it's been fun, I think, instead of trying to find like a middle ground all the time, to be able to like wedge certain things next to each other. So there's like moments where you have like a very singer-songwriter thing, but then you have like a drum sample sitting below it, and then you hop into a section with like a house bass synth and like a 90s like hip-hop synth with like programmed drums. And then we made a lot of our own samples too on the last album. So like that was like Jason like working pretty heavily on like how to mic things the right way and like how we would sit and like talk snare tuning for like 30 minutes, like try it again. Right. And then we'd take that sound and then we'd transform that and then we'd slap it in over pre-existing samples and stuff. There's a lot of that really like intense minutia that went into a lot, especially like the drums on this last album.
I was gonna say we work really quick unless we're working slow, in which case we work very slow.
That's the extreme.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it is interesting even when you then look at you guys performing live and, for example, going from the electronic drum sounds to the acoustic drum sounds, and you're playing some bass and some guitar and you're playing guitar and the vocals, and so you all are jumping around to the different kind of things. Tell us a little bit about the challenge of taking those big productions, because you guys have pretty lush, you go from big lush productions to, as you said, more singer-songwriter and back again. Tell us a little bit about the process of taking that on stage.
So when we kind of always have to like relearn our songs. So like, because when we're in the studio, we write it. A lot of times we just record it and use like the stuff we've done that day during the writing session. So we don't necessarily like have those parts set in stones in our head. So we kind of just go back, dissect all the parts, see like who plays what, and we use a lot of like MIDI to help like switch stuff. So like if I need to play bass and then I need to quickly go to the keyboard, but I don't have time to switch like the patch, it'll automatically be there for me to play. And just like all our effects pedals, like Landon stuff, will all switch over and stuff like that. So like we can be more productive on stage as a 3-piece, but it's not like cheating per se, but like it's just more efficient, I guess.
Right.
It's like
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, electronics are can be a little bit of a crutch. Computers can be, but I think what we've always wanted to use them as is not a crutch in order to make it easier on us, but a crutch so that we can make it more difficult and play more things and not be limited in the sounds we can jump between. That's more of, I think, where we're always coming from, is how can we be the most busy and not busy doing things that don't really
matter.
Like switching through like analog patching or like that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
There are certain
exactly.
things where it's like those moments can be fun, but you want to intersperse those with also being able to move around really quickly and transition seamlessly in songs and keep an integrity as well to the way they were recorded, because we spent so long on these songs being recorded in a certain way. I think there's a certain amount of that we'd like to keep, and I think it does justice to the fan base as well when they're going to come out and see a show. They want to see a little bit of that staying intact, and then there's areas where we'll expand like a 4-minute song into a 9-minute song, and those are fun moments because those are very far away from the record. But in general, I think if you make a record, if you really liked it and you were proud enough of it to put it out, then you owe it, like you owe the stuff that you made the respect of doing it justice live.
Sure. So you mentioned taking a shorter song and making it longer, or extending it in a live situation. With the programming that you need to do for some of these electronics that you're using and things, how do you manage that? Do you do it on the fly, or do you have to plan that out in advance?
There's a little bit of planning that, but there are so I have some triggers on stage that so the end of and run, we can just go as long as we want, and it'll just keep, a lot of stuff is looping, and so that's all triggered by MIDI to record Landon's guitar part or my synth part that I'm playing, and then I'll switch to guitar. So we'll keep layering on that, and we each take a solo and stuff. Hayden's going crazy on drums. So it's up to us every night as far as how long we want to go, and then I can eventually, when Hayden actually gives me the cue when we're gonna stop, and then I can kind of trigger a button, and then everything will just
everything.
cut.
Right.
And then there's an outro that I play on synth, and that synth will switch to that patch. And so there is flexibility that, as long as there's programming that has to be done beforehand, but it's to create the flexibility.
We've made it a bit of a headache for Jason, but he's risen to the challenge of because you want that, we were definitely going into this new cycle of touring, everybody was definitely craving that flexibility to play these songs, but also to expand them, or to harness some of these electronics and use them in interesting ways. And so it's more the show is now kind of set up in a way where if we are going to jam, there's a platform for it and a vague roadmap, but we still get to drive the car.
Right. That's awesome. It still allows spontaneity, interaction with the audience.
And some
moments. As well.
There's a lot of the songs we just play the same way, and the only difference is maybe a little vocal inflection here, or a little twist of a delay here or something.
Yeah.
But I think we did want to build in at least 1 or 2 of those moments into our headlining shows, where we had the room to improvise and change the pace just a little bit, to be able to feel the room out a little bit more and change the pace in that kind of way, which is something we never had before. We were everything was gridded all the way through.
How is that different than previous tours, where I've seen videos where you had additional musicians on stage with you as well? And now it's the 3 of you. You're not running any additional musicians, correct?
Yeah. I do a lot more guitar looping, which is all set up through MIDI through the M13. And then Jason's doing double duty almost all the time now. He has the sample pad. So whether he's doing hammer-on with bass through some kind of compressor, so that he doesn't have to be actually plucking. So he'll do hammer-on while playing keyboard stuff, or he'll be playing on one keyboard and another keyboard, or sampling and playing something on a keyboard. So he's always doing double duty and singing. And then we got voice live stuff for vocal doubling for his voice. So when he's doing background stuff, it's fuller.
It can sound like 4 people, or some harmonies and stuff.
And Hayden's as busy as ever. There's a lot of drum stuff going on. He was always that busy. His job has remained just as busy. He gets to come out from behind the drums for a little portion of And Run now, which is cool. He's out on the MPD.
Right.
Yeah, and then mostly now I'm vocal looping, but a lot of our stuff too ended up being nicely simple as well.
Yeah.
So there's still moments where I get to take off the guitar, not be stuck to a keyboard. I get to cruise around and glory boy a little bit. It's fun.
Yeah. Right on. interesting, Landon. I saw a quote from you in an interview where you said, I'm going to paraphrase, basically you don't want to be middle ground. You want people either to love it or hate it. In this world of social media and instant reactions that people can have and the way everyone can post and share their opinion, tell us a little bit about how that all factors into what you do.
Well, I mean, I think firstly, yeah, from like a response perspective, I think that strong feelings mean you made something strong, whether it was something that somebody liked or didn't like. But I think that's more what I'm in search of, is making something that I feel really strongly about.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm really proud of it, then that's good enough for me. And if it, like this last record I've said before had like saved my life, I was in a really, really dark period of life, and I was going through a lot personally and was feeling extremely lonely and purposeless. And the studio and writing music with these guys saved my life and gave me a place to go and something to do that felt productive and transformative in that kind of way, and music was really healing. And so I do music selfishly, first and foremost. I think, like, if I'm being honest with myself, like,
Mm-hmm.
I do it for me, and anything that anybody else gets out of it, like even like these guys enjoying it, like that's something I hope exists as a byproduct. But first and foremost, like, I do it because I need it, and I've always needed it.
Right.
And I think when you're honest with who you are and what you're doing, it can be polarizing. There's a bit of that in all kinds of art. Like, there are bands that I love. One of my favorite bands is Radiohead. People can't talk enough crap on Radiohead, some people. For whatever reason. Maybe they don't like the fans, or they don't like whatever kind of thing it is. But I think I just want to make something that's strong enough in itself that some people might have something to disagree with, or they don't like the sound of it because it's too particular or whatever it is, or they don't like,
Right.
they think we're ripping off this thing, so then they're going to talk smack about it or whatever it is. It's not, for me, I think, like, I'm lucky enough to be selfish enough about making music that kind of, like, a negative reaction isn't going to feel that bad to me, and the positive reactions are going to feel really nostalgic in the sense that, like, I'm giving something the same thing, hopefully, that music gave to me growing up. Or
Right.
like at times in my life when I really needed music, like Prince was there and I was dancing along to it. Or, you know, all the music growing up, like if I needed to cry, I was there in my parents' car listening to Snow Patrol, you know, like.
Right.
And I think if I can give people any piece of that, then that's great. And all the negative stuff, it's like, especially this day and age, there's enough negativity to go around. Like, there's no use wearing that like some kind of new skin that makes you feel like shit about yourself.
Right. That ties in actually to a quote I saw from you, Hayden, in an interview where you were talking about what's important isn't necessarily to make music for other people, but to be sure you're nurturing yourself as an artist and that you're getting that nourishment out of that. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to, like, I guess, saying that sometimes we can feel like a studio project, just in the sense of, I think that us making music in the studio tends to be, like, pretty life-giving for all of us. It really tends to, like, whether it's giving kind of a sense of order and fulfillment to my life, or giving, like, a place to you know, grieve or just express yourself, or, you know, a place where Jason has really, like, it's kind of his life's work to make it. So I think, like, all of the, you know, all those things together means that studio is, like, a very fulfilling place for us, and writing music, I think, will, like, always be that. I guess it's basically just as long as we don't, and that's what it's like to have three people writing music together, is, like, as long as we don't lose sight of that, as long as everybody is able to, like, be themselves in the studio, achieve what they need personally in the studio, I think that makes us as, like, a collective entity just much stronger.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We talk about those things a lot too, like keeping it, like, mutually respectful and
Mhm.
and like airing out any grievances and trying to head those things off as soon as possible. You know, we're all, like, each other's own, like, band therapists, like, just talking things out and, like, being there when somebody has a question or a concern. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, I think we're lucky to get to do what we do. And, like, the moment that anything is about, it's different to be selfish about making music versus, like, having an ego about it. And,
Right.
like, I think I would love to continue to be, like, maybe properly selfish is the best way of putting it. Like, completely egoless and humble with, especially with these two guys, but to be able to like be thankful for making music every day, and then but to keep on doing it for us, which I think is like, as soon like Hayden was
It
saying,
makes touring like more sustainable, honestly, because like when you've worked on these songs and that's the way you've approached them, to me sometimes, you know, we have good days and bad days, but like on the good days out here, it feels like there should be nothing to give but like gratitude, because like we got to just incubate these songs and give ourselves, and then people are responding to that. So that makes touring, of course, travel is hard, but it's like you're just getting feedback on that. So so it just, the road becomes a place of gratitude, home becomes a place of just creativity, expression, and hanging out with your friends, and occasionally writing bad songs in the studio too.
plenty of bad songs.
Plenty of bad songs.
Yeah.
Well, I think more bad songs realistically
Definitely more
than good
bad
ones.
songs.
Yeah, a lot more bad ones than good ones.
Yeah.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about that process. One of the interesting ways that I have read that you guys work is, Jason, you'll present an instrumental, which you'll then put lyrics to, or you guys will develop then. How fully developed are the instrumentals when you bring something like that to the band? Is it a full demo? Is it just an idea?
It varies. I mean, sometimes it's a full demo, but even if it comes that way, like these guys will edit it down. Like Landon will say, like, I like this part, like specifically in Run. I think we only took, was it that song? We only took like the
It's just that
the lead line and like the bass, that bass portion.
and the drums were like generally in the same kind of vibe,
Yeah.
but then like Hayden, especially between first album and second album, Hayden really, we started to lean on his taste a little bit more for drums,
Drum
and then like
stuff.
moving into the third album, his and like all throughout he was like gathering samples and like really working on his like dialing in sounds, and he was working in headphones on his own computer, like in Ableton, like cutting stuff up and like pitching things and like really dialing in his sensibility from having grown up listening a lot to drums in records and listening to a lot of music and having a very specific kind of taste. I think we started leaning on that a lot more. And so there might be like ideas of rhythms and things that are in Jason's demos that then get fine-tuned, and it'll be like, oh, I really like this sound, but I think maybe that chord is a little out of place. Like as I'm starting to think about melodies, that's leading me in a weird direction. Like I think we need it to switch this like here. And then I'll like go into the other room and come back with like especially with And Run, it was like we had that house bass, and then Hayden was working on like complementing some of the drum stuff Jason had already been doing, that lead line. And then we pared it down for the verse, and then that pre-chorus, I went into the other room and came back in and was like, hey, how about this? And I just strummed out on acoustic guitar. And I was like, I think if we had like the drum sample playing in the back through the speakers and we just like mic'd that so it was like smaller feeling and just stuck that behind this like really singer-songwriter kind of acoustic guitar moment, that would be like, that's my ideal situation if it works out.
Yeah.
So then we tried it and it was like, wow, that's it's really fun when like you have like the initial spark of an idea and then it actually works out the way you were hoping it would. But yeah, I think a lot of it, especially the second album, a lot of it started with instrumentals that Jason had. Hayden had, in specific, I think Change was one that whole like intro section basically came straight from his laptop. And then
I mean, you'll come in too with like some melodies and chords, and we'll build up upon that too.
I don't think
like
at
there's
all on the
certain
second record. I think the second record,
Maybe
I
not.
didn't bring... The first record, I brought in some things from outside where I'd be like a song like Helpless, I wrote almost entirely on piano, and then I brought that in, and then we completely changed the way it sounded, but the whole song existed, like chord structure and lyrics and melody existed almost entirely before bringing that into the studio.
Right.
But on the second album, I don't think we did that at all. I can't think of a single song.
But then we have a couple potential ones for the third album that are very much like Landon had, like in a box. Like the songs are almost done, and
it makes it a little harder in some
It can
ways.
sometimes make it, but it's like on mine and Jason's side of things, it's really interesting because you have it's almost like it becomes a challenge to like not wanting to get in the way of the song, just like augment it as much as possible. When like Landon has like, oh, that's verse, chorus, like, you know, bridge chords or whatever as well, and then it's like, so those are, we kind of end up doing all different ways, and they're good, and some can work. We can have awesome instrumentals that like we're super excited about, and then it's just not really taking shape, and we're like, and then that just happens. But it's
I think it can be difficult to bring a song in and try to find the right place that it fits in a lot of times, because I think like one thing that has marked our songwriting, at least like our work in the studio, has been the idea of wanting to be sonically progressive, at least to ourselves in our own sphere. Like I'm not going to claim progressiveness in cultural context or anything like that, but for ourselves, like we want to be being progressive. And so it's hard writing a song on an acoustic guitar sometimes, because it doesn't like, there's not necessarily anything sonically progressive feeling about it. And so trying to lend that kind of aesthetic to a song without detracting from the simplicity of it can be a really difficult thing. And I think sometimes lately I've been feeling a little bit more okay with maybe like backing away from needing to be sonically progressive and just letting a good song, like a full song, exist in a more simple format. But I think we've still been doing a good job anyway of always finding a new little angle, I think, between all the like the musical inspirations that we have and their disparities. I think we find kind of a nice place to nestle some of that simplicity in.
Right. One of the challenges with working in the way you're describing, where you're kind of collectively creating, is it's hard as a writer to not get invested in your ideas, right?
Can
and
be,
to deal with somebody saying, well, that idea didn't work, or that doesn't, when, like, you may present a song and this is your favorite idea and that's not the one that everybody likes. you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Tell us how you manage that and not get upset, not get frustrated, and those kinds of things.
I mean, these guys were saying about how we kind of created a safe space, like in the studio. I think we just all trust each other, like, and if these guys don't like something that I've done, then let's move on. Like, nothing's sacred in the studio. We just want to make the best song that we can.
Yeah.
And I'm sure these guys feel the same way.
Yeah, it still can totally. I'd be lying if I said that there's not times where we all present stuff and it's like, and somebody else is not feeling it, and it can be easy to be bummed out. But we all trust each other, and I can't think of a time where longer than a few hours I've been like, you might hang on to an idea for a bit, and then it's like, okay, if two people, if these other two are really like not about it, like, I trust these guys. I mean, we've never put out something with that, like, to a couple people in the band. We're like, I never really liked that song, but we put it, like, so it's like, well, then I trust that we're doing just, we've made it this far. I think, right. I think they're probably right. So.
Sure.
Yeah, I think there's very few times where anybody's ever tried to like put their foot down. Mm-hmm. There's like, I don't even know if it happened over music. I think it was over a photo one time I tried to put my foot down. And the standoff lasted a while, and then I ended up being like, I'm a real like, I think I was clinging to like the wrong idea. Occasionally I think I'll be the one to hold on to an idea, that hold on to something the longest. But my rule is, like, if I can't properly convince somebody to come around to it, then like there's got to be a better idea there somewhere.
Right.
And we prescribe to the like you'll try anything once, like Dan Wilson from Semisonics, like amazing songwriter, and Landon has gotten to know him a bit, and he kind of shared a bit of advice from Dan that was like, if somebody has an idea in the studio, like, I mean, just at least see through that idea, give it an at bat, basically, and try it. That's a productive way to
Can't
work.
say no to something you haven't heard. Like, your imagination of what the thing's going to sound like is not what it is going to sound like exactly. And so sometimes it can be a matter of, for us, going like, well, it'll be like, oh, everybody's saying no to that idea, and you're like, well, it's not exactly what I was trying to get across. So like, we can go a little further down this rabbit hole, or you can start to realize that it's like, even though it's not exactly what I was trying to get across, we're not going to hit what I thought it was going to sound like. And that, like, especially with rhythmic stuff, a lot of times it can be like, oh, that subdivision like is not working for me. I like the idea of the subdivision, but can we get it from somewhere else? Mm-hmm. Do we need that sound to be doing the 16th? Like, can we find another place? Or like, is the subdivision actually the wrong move there? And is it making the song feel slower now? Because you like those types of things that you don't know until you try it.
Right.
So I think saying no to something off the bat is pretty much always a bad idea. unless it's like the most absurd thing. It's like, no, we're not, like, that would take an hour to do, and we're not going to go down that rabbit hole because it's ridiculous. But I think in general, saying no to something before you've heard it is a really bad idea. And I think in general it's disrespectful to the people you're writing songs with, because you're not crediting their imagination as important as your own. Because it might be like, the only reason to say no to something like that is if you think that you might have something that you would like to spend time on in that moment that you don't want to allow somebody else to spend their time, or to feel powerful. There's a lot of naysayers I've found in songwriting who say no to things and don't have any other ideas for themselves. So they're not actually giving anything creatively, they're just negating something to feel part of something, and that's also a really frustrating place to be in.
Sure.
So I think that's why having the no rule is a good policy.
Right.
For us especially.
You mentioned the third album. Are you headed into the studio soon, or are you already in the studio?
We're in the studio. We write in the studio.
Yeah. And it's a bus studio.
Cobbled together
Parked
bus
out front of Sweetwater right now.
Yeah.
I just lost track in the middle of the interview because Landon was mentioning subdivisions, and I just started thinking about "Loved by You." And, I got to fix that verse still. Yeah, we're like constantly tinkering, and there's some songs that are getting close. The album is like starting to take shape, but it's the. Like, so we write a lot of bad ones before we get good ones, and yeah.
It's like halfway there.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
We're writing less bad songs maybe, and just not finishing ones that don't feel like they're right for the album. Especially like we've been doing a lot of, like I was saying, a lot more simple kind of stuff, like a little bit more like classic kind of songwriting stuff that we grew up listening to, leaning a little bit more into our roots in that kind of way. And so there'll be songs where it's like you get like a verse and a chorus and it's like, I'm just lyrically not feeling this, or like this instrumental doesn't really have the right energy. Let's can it and we'll come back and write another song tomorrow. And I think we've been finding that to be a good balance. We're better at being self-aware now, and like knowing what the song's going to look like when it finishes, and being like, I'm not going to hold on to this anymore.
Right.
Like, let's go get a good night's sleep and come back and try this again tomorrow.
Sure. Do you ever find that a week, a month later, then you go, the perfect idea for this would have been that one that we were working on that we decided not to pursue, and you're resurrected?
We don't really revisit stuff that much.
We'll revisit maybe like certain drum like sounds or certain samples might occasionally get revisited or like recycled if it was from like a bad demo, but like, oh, the sounds are cool. But like I think like songwriting, like in
that's
terms
something that
of
more
like,
comes up with like drums for you.
Yeah.
Like you'll bring back around a drum thing and it'll be like, isn't that the thing from that song? It's like, yeah, it actually works better here.
Yeah.
Occasionally.
Yeah.
But pretty much like I have a really emotional reaction to music. I always have. And so it's really hard for me, like, once I have a feeling in my gut about a song or I don't, to change. I'll maybe, like, reuse an idea of a lyric or something, but it's not ever quite the same.
Sure.
It usually has to be a complete different direction. Because if I can't, like, I kind of see songs, like, the way when we're working it out there, it's like balances of colors and stuff, so it's like a little bit of a painting. And then the whole time is like trying to find with these guys, like trying to balance their input and what it is that I'm like seeing or feeling in my head and in my gut to find like that balance or like that bright splash of color that's supposed to like sit on top or whatever it is. And if there's something like, if the lyrics aren't lending themselves to any kind of picture and the sonic space isn't lending itself to that kind of picture, it's really hard to even want to go down that road. I think we all have like our own way of describing that feeling, but it's like you hear it and you're like, oh yeah, this is done.
Right.
Like we've hit a dead end and there's no use going any further down this road. But it's always gratifying, I think, when you know the song is on its way to being great and you hit a little bit of a stopping place. But it's like figuring out a puzzle. Like that's kind of the magic of being in the studio too, is getting through that and seeing it to the other side. And having done that with like 10 songs on this last album, where like there were stopping points in each song that got really difficult, and then to be able to like figure the puzzle out in the way that actually like works it out is a really gratifying thing. I think maybe like the most artistically gratifying thing for me.
Right. Well, we'll certainly look forward to what's coming on the new album.
Thank you.
Congratulations on all the success, millions of views, and out touring, and festivals, and album releases, and everything. It's great. It's just a pleasure to meet you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Thank
coming
you.
in today.
Thanks for having us.
Hayden, Landon,
Thanks for having us.
Jason, you bet. Thank you
you.
for coming in. And thank you for joining me for the Sweetwater Minute. I'm Mitch Gallagher.